Okay, so here we are back to this final part of this solve. And I've recorded this like 15 times. I even posted two of them this morning. I just did not like the story I was telling, and I want to try and just make this really succinct and final. And I already have started receiving emails and stuff from people like slamming me for saying a structure and home of Molly Brown. Da, da, da. And I told you, I said, I'm threading this together, and you have to use your imagination, on this thing. And this is a solve I had, and we put boots in the ground and we did it, and it is what it is. So the answer to the whole thing was that Logan, you had Logan Street below the home of Molly Brown, and then you had to go see the panel at um, the state house, the state capitol in Denver, and you see Logan's decree there. And what we put together as we were driving home was that it's Logan's Pass in Glacier National Park. And that's where we headed. We drove to Glacier National Park, going to the Sun Road, and this is right at the very top of the of that location. And this is a stock photo that I grabbed out because I like that it summarizes very quickly the point I'm trying to make. And I try to spread this thing out, it keeps becoming like three more videos, and I just want to cut to the chase and explain, that it's Logan Pass, and then the other part of it is the Continental Divide crosses right over it, and that would be where Warm Waters halt, is Logan's Pass at the Continental Divide. And the without going into a ton of detail of it, and I did, and I might do some other video about that at some other time, is that um, this is also at Logan's Pass, and here is the visitor center. And I understand the thing about the structure. Again, I'm already getting hit over the head with emails and stuff about structures. I understand structures, but spent 2 almost 3 hours around, maybe even longer, hiking around this ranger station at Logan Pass in Glacier National Park, where the Continental Divide goes right through, looking behind walls, behind up and down trees, everything. And at one point I made a boo-boo, and let's swipe back to this. So here's the parking lot, and this is looking south down the canyon down. And once you go up past that ranger station, you see all of this amazing landscape and all these features with rocks and everything. And my supposition is that Forrest Fenn, he didn't bury the treasure; he hid it underneath a rock. He knew someplace where he could lift up some kind of flat rock, and slide the rock on top of the thing, and you have to know to go exactly to that rock. Now, the problem that we found is that Glacier National Park, at this location, it's all cordoned off. We found that they have these paved little trails, and there's little posts, and there's signs everywhere basically threatening prosecution and violation of federal law and jail time and fines. And at one point, actually, I was way down here near the end, and I didn't think anybody was watching. I jumped the thing and I started walking out down here, and a ranger came out booking. He came down in full regalia. He had a sidearm. He had on his full uniform, and he was not happy with me. I was threatened almost with arrest, and I was very, very, very lucky that I talked my way out of it. And it sounds like he was kind of near the end of his shift, so he kind of said, "I don't want to see you do this again. I'm gonna let you go. I don't want to ruin your vacation." And so that was a quick lesson learned, and it kind of blew our solve. It blew the solve. And I understand people are already saying, but your solve's already, broken up anyways, and it probably was. I mean, maybe it was, but despite that, I think this was looking another way, and there's a trail. I'm standing on the marked trail, and we were just, I was just drooling on all these different features and stuff, and I could easily have seen that Forrest Fenn would park in that parking lot. It's about a day afternoon trip up the road there, and then hoofing that thing out here somewhere, and then having to go back and get the rest of it, and hiding it underneath the rock. And the problem is, could not get out there. Another thing too I'm aware of is that this area is covered in winter with snow, with drifts sometimes as high as 30 to 40 feet or more. Um, so at that point, with tail between legs, headed back down to see if I can find this. Oh, here it is. And so I wanted to show this graphically, just to kind of make my point. And the more I've tried to explain this video and cut it, the more defeated I've gotten by my own solve. But here it is. So let's do this. So here is, we can zoom in. Here is where I've just been showing you. Here's the Logan Visitor Center. The Continental Divide runs right through here. This is all this snowy area that we had that I had believed that that's where it is. And you're not allowed. You can actually see the ribbon of the trail that you're allowed to walk up on the marked path, but it's there's signs warning all along that you can't go out in this area, and so that had killed that. And we also noticed that when you drive down the South Valley, there's this little curve in the road, and this is definitely not far, but too far to walk. I mean, it's walkable, but it is a heck of a hike. And another thing too is if you look at the elevation change, um, if I try and switch between 3D and 2D, you can see how steep the drop off here is here. And when you walk along this road, even driving or when walking, it's definitely no place for the meek. It is definitely a place where you want to your check your deity, and the road makes a curve here, and we noticed that it's called Lunch Creek, and Forrest Fenn had said something to the extent of that you need to bring a sandwich and a flashlight, and so we saw that as an omen that lunch and sandwich, that maybe that's a clue, right? And so this is the part that I want to cut to the chase with is, went back. I think I wanted to zoom out of that and show that just really quick. Went back, gave up, drove all the way down back to St. Mary's Lake and the city of St. Mary's, Montana, and stayed the night in the campground. Drank probably way too much and talked about it over and mulled it out, thought about it overnight, and decided to return back up the mountain to Lunch Creek. And so here's the pictures from that. If I can get this thing up in the right way. Give me a second here. Okay, here is this set of pictures. Try and fit this in so it's one video. And this was the morning pictures. It was very early in the morning. It was early. I think it was maybe 7 a.m. or maybe even earlier. And we were one of the first up there. There was very few people up there. It can be very busy even by 9 o'clock. And so we went back to Lunch Creek, and here is literally the curve that I was showing you at Lunch Creek. And this is what it looks like when you get out of the car. And this definitely kind of caught my idea of that this is the home of Brown. Take it in the canyon down, and like I said, up above is where Warm Waters halt, and you take it in the canyon down. We were definitely threading stuff together, but what we were seeing, is there's heavy loads and there's water high, and when you turn around, this is the National Park Trail. This is the sanctioned trail that goes up, but when you go the other way, when you look down the other way from that across the road from that trail, you see this, and there is no marked trail. There's just this heavily wooded area, and we I decided to go down there. So it's very rugged and difficult to get down. There's large boulders. There is no trail, and you have to cut your own trail down through there. And once you break through the trees about 40 or 50 yards down, that was the other thing, the point that I want to make as quickly as possible is that when you start cutting down here, it definitely felt like in the poem he's saying, I went down there alone. It's definitely not a place where you're going to take 40 people down. You go in there alone, and it becomes sort of claustrophobic. You do feel like you're going in there to get down there. Um, the next thing that I noticed when you break through the trees is that there's this uh, part of the creek, and I took that as a good omen. I was thinking, this is there's no paddle up your creek because it's dried up, and you can actually walk right down the creek. At other times of the year, this is flowing with water, and you could walk right down it, that creek. Let's go. I got the pictures all in the wrong order. So when it opens up to this area here. I walked further down and found this water feature, and at that point, I thought I had solved it, and dug around underneath this water feature, and there's a bunch of rocks turned over, and um, was it was not there. And if you turn around from this site, the next thing you see is there's a cliff here and it goes down. And so, to make a long story short, you can actually see the angle. It's very, very steep. The trees are straight, and the hill is almost 65 degrees down. And you'll see the other pictures, but I went down here. This is about 200, it's at least 100 to 150 feet down here. It's very steep, and there's this wall here. I spent a bunch of time, you know, this wall doesn't look as extensive as it does in the picture, but it's quite huge. Spent a bunch of time looking around in all these little crevices, trying to figure out maybe Fenn put it in here. Um, no luck on that. Here's another shot, and here's looking back up, which would be the heavy loads and water high. And I'll explain that again. We saw this was this feature of this tree, and there's this rock formation. The picture really doesn't explain it really well, but there was these chunky rocks, and every other rock underneath that tree, looked was about 10 by 10, and had this sort of, because of the way the water had washed it away. At one point I thought that the chest was. I pulled away one rock, and another rock was there, and seemed almost like impossible that it was exactly like a 10 by 10 rock, but it was just a rock, and that was upsetting too. And I was careful to put the rocks back. I didn't just throw them all over the place. Um, and this is at the bottom of that ravine, and the last little piece going, and right at the below here where these trees are, it drops off 500 feet. And this is looking back down that ravine. You see the little shelves. You see all these rocks leaning up against each other, and spend time moving these rocks, looking all over. To be frank with you, you could probably spend several hours looking around here, and we spent a bunch of time, probably maybe a half hour doing that. And again, this was the idea of it was this was heavy loads and water high. Is that there was heavy loads above and water high. And last but not least, to cut this thing short, and not go on and on about it any more than I have to, um, the kind of coup de grace photo of this whole thing, if I can find it, was headed back up. We found this, and you see this giant red pillow rock. It is very distinctive. It is a huge rock, and it's just very distinctive. But the more interesting thing was that there's this huge white rocks. These three of them piled up, and they stood out. All the other rocks are kind of this reddish rock, but these were very distinct. And started looking down and realized that we saw this little rock here that looked like a box, and that was another heart pounding moment. But after sticking our hands in there, realized that it's just a rock, a very square rock. And if you look down, you see there's you can see it looks like 10 inches by 10 inches. There's the outline of what appears to be the top of the box, and after a whole bunch of scraping around and digging and everything, it is not the treasure chest box. So that's it. That is my solve, and just sort of dump it out. And so I hope you enjoyed that. Leave any comments, like my videos, and I might do some other follow up thing to this because I got to cut this short. So thanks for watching.